The Lockheed C-130 Hercules is a four-engine turboprop military transport aircraft designed and built originally by Lockheed, now Lockheed Martin. Capable of using unprepared runways for takeoffs and landings, the C-130 was originally designed as a troop, medical evacuation, and cargo transport aircraft. The versatile airframe has found uses in a variety of other roles, including as a gunship, for airborne assault, search and rescue, scientific research support, weather reconnaissance, aerial refueling, maritime patrol, and aerial firefighting. It is now the main tactical airlifter for many military forces worldwide. Over 40 models and variants of the Hercules serve with more than 60 nations. The C-130 entered service with U.S. in the 1950s, followed by Australia and others. During its years of service, the Hercules family has participated in numerous military, civilian and humanitarian aid operations. The family has the longest continuous production run of any military aircraft in history. In 2007, the C-130 became the fifth aircraft after the English Electric Canberra, Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, Tupolev Tu-95, and Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker, all designs with various forms of aviation gas turbine power plants to mark 50 years of continuous use with its original primary customer, in this case, the United States Air Force. The C-130 is one of the only military aircraft to remain in continuous production for over 50 years with its original customer, as the updated C-130J Super Hercules. Design and development, background and requirements. The Korean War, which began in June 1950, showed that World War II-era piston-engine transports Fairchild C-119 flying boxcars, Douglas C-47 Skytrains and Curtiss C-46 Commandos were inadequate for modern warfare. Thus, on February 2, 1951, the United States Air Force issued a general operating requirement for a new transport to Boeing, Douglas, Fairchild, Lockheed, Martin, Chase Aircraft, North American, Northrop, and Airlifts Incorporated. The new transport would have a capacity for 92 passengers, 72 combat troops or 64 paratroopers in a cargo compartment that was approximately 41 feet long, 9 feet high, and 10 feet wide. Unlike transports derived from passenger airliners, it was to be designed from the ground up as a combat transport with loading from a hinged loading ramp at the rear of the fuselage. This innovation for military cargo aircraft was first pioneered, known as the Turboprop, on the World War II German Junkers Ju-252 and Ju-352 Hercules transport prototypes. The Hercules resembled a larger four-engine brother to the C-123 provider with a similar wing and cargo ramp layout that evolved from the Chase XCG-20 of Ittruk, which in turn, was first designed and flown as a cargo glider in 1947. The Boeing C-97 Stratofortress also had a rear ramp, which made it possible to drive vehicles onto the plane. The ramp on the Hercules was also used to airdrop cargo, which included low-altitude extraction for Sheridan tanks and even dropping large improvised daisy cutter bombs. A key feature was the introduction of the Allison T-56 turboprop powerplant, first developed specifically for the C-130. At the time, the turboprop was a new application of turbine engines that used exhaust gases to turn a propeller, which offered greater range at propeller-driven speeds compared to pure turbojets, which were faster but thirstier. As was the case on helicopters of that era, such as the UH-1 Huey, turboshafts produced much more power for their weight than piston engines. Lockheed would subsequently use the same engines and technology in the Lockheed L-188 Electra. That aircraft failed financially in its civilian configuration but was successfully adapted into the Lockheed P-3 Orion maritime patrol and submarine attack aircraft where the efficiency and endurance of turboprops excelled. The new Lockheed cargo plane design possessed a range of 1,100 mi, takeoff capability from short and unprepared strips, and the ability to fly with one engine shut down. Fairchild, North American, Martin, and Northrop declined to participate. The remaining 5 companies tendered a total of 10 designs: Lockheed 2, Boeing 1, Chase 3, Douglas 3, and Airlifts Incorporated 1. The contest was a close affair between the lighter of the two Lockheed proposals and a four-turboprop Douglas design. The Lockheed design team was led by Willis Hawkins, starting with a 130-page proposal for the Lockheed L-206. Hall Hibbard, Lockheed Vice President and Chief Engineer, saw the proposal and directed it to Kelly Johnson, who did not care for the low-speed, unarmed aircraft, and remarked, "If you sign that letter, you will destroy the Lockheed Company." Both Hibbard and Johnson signed the proposal and the company won the contract for the now designated Model 82 on July 2, 1951. The first flight of the YC-130 prototype was made on August 23, 1954 from the Lockheed plant in Burbank, California. The aircraft, serial number 53-3397, was the second prototype, but the first of the two to fly. The YC-130 was piloted by Stanley Belts and Roy Wimmer on its 61-minute flight to Edwards Air Force Base. Jack Reel and Dick Stanton served as flight engineers. Kelly Johnson flew chase in a Lockheed P-2V Neptune. Into production, after the two prototypes were completed, production began in Marietta, Georgia, where over 2,300 C-130s have been built through 2009. The initial production model, the C-130A, was powered by Allison T56A9 turboprops with three-blade propellers and originally equipped with a blunt nose of the prototypes. Deliveries began in December 1956, continuing until the introduction of the C-130B model in 1959. Some A models were redesignated C-130D after being equipped with skis. The newer C-130B had ailerons with increased booster Euro 3000 SI versus 2050 upside Euro as well as uprated engines and four-bladed propellers that were standard until the J model's introduction. Improved versions. As the C-130A became operational with Tactical Air Command, the C-130's lack of range became apparent and additional fuel capacity was added in the form of external pylon-mounted tanks at the end of the wings. The C-130B model was developed to complement the A models that had previously been delivered, and incorporated new features, particularly increased fuel capacity in the form of auxiliary tanks built into the center wing section and an AC electrical system. Four-bladed Hamilton standard propellers replaced the Aero product three-bladed propellers that distinguished the earlier A models. An electronic reconnaissance variant of the C-130B was designated C-130BE. A total of 13 aircraft were converted. The C-130BII was distinguished by its false external wing fuel tanks, which were disguised signals intelligence receiver antennas. These pods were slightly larger than the standard wing tanks found on other C-130Bs. Most aircraft featured a swept blade antenna on the upper fuselage, as well as extra wire antennas between the vertical fin and upper fuselage not found on other C-130s. Radio call numbers on the tail of these aircraft were regularly changed so as to confuse observers and disguise their true mission. The extended-range C-130E model entered service in 1962 after it was developed as an interim long-range transport for the Military Air Transport Service. Essentially a B model, the new designation was the result of the installation of 1,360 U.S. GAL Sergeant Fletcher external fuel tanks under each wing's midsection and more powerful Allison T56A7A turboprops. The hydraulic boost pressure to the ailerons was reduced back to 2050 psi as a consequence of the external tank's weight in the middle of the wingspan. The E model also featured structural improvements, avionics upgrades and a higher gross weight. Australia took delivery of 12 C-130 Hercules during 1966 a Euro 67 to supplement the 12 C-130A models already in service with the RAAF. Sweden and Spain fly the TP-84T version of the C-130E fitted for aerial refueling capability. Refueling versions, the KC-130 tankers, originally C-130Fs procured for the U.S. Marine Corps in 1958 are equipped with a removable 3,600 U.S. GAL stainless steel fuel tank carried inside the cargo compartment. The two wing-mounted hose and drogue aerial refueling pods each transfer up to 300 U.S. GAL per minute to two aircraft simultaneously, allowing for rapid cycle times of multiple receiver aircraft formations. The U.S. Navy's C-130J has increased structural strength, allowing higher gross weight operation. More improvements. The C-130H model has updated Allison T-56A-15 turboprops, a redesigned outer wing, updated avionics and other minor improvements. Later H models had a new, fatigue life improved, center wing that was retrofitted to many earlier H models. The H model remains in widespread use with the United States Air Force and many foreign air forces. Initial deliveries began in 1964, remaining in production until 1996. An improved C-130H was introduced in 1974, with Australia purchasing 12 of type in 1978 to replace the original 12 C-130A models, which had first entered RAAF service in 1958. The United States Coast Guard employs the C-130H for long-range search and rescue, drug interdiction, illegal migrant patrols, homeland security, and logistics. C-130H models produced from 1992 to 1996 were designated as C-130H-3 by the USAF. The 3 denoting the third variation in design for the H series. Improvements included ring laser gyros for the INUs, GPS receivers, a partial glass cockpit, a more capable APN-241 color radar, night vision device-compatible instrument lighting, and an integrated radar and missile warning system. The electrical system upgrade included generator control units and bus switching units to provide stable power to the more sensitive upgraded components. The equivalent model for export to the UK is the C-130K, known by the Royal Air Force as the Hercules C-1. The C-130H-30 is a stretched version of the original Hercules, achieved by inserting a 100-in plug aft of the cockpit and an 80-in plug at the rear of the fuselage. A single C-130K was purchased by the Met Office for use by its meteorological research flight, where it was classified as the Hercules W2. This aircraft was heavily modified. This aircraft, named Snoopy, was withdrawn in 2001 and was then modified by Marshall of Cambridge Aerospace's flight test bed for the A400M turbine engine, the TP400. The C-130K is used by the RAF Falcons for parachute drops. 3 C-130K were upgraded and sold to the Austrian Air Force in 2002. Later models, the MC-130E Combat Talon was developed for the USAF during the Vietnam War to support special operations missions throughout Southeast Asia, and spawned both an MC-130H Combat Talon II as well as a family of other special missions aircraft. 37 of the earliest models currently operating with the Air Force Special Operations Command are scheduled to be replaced by new production MC-130J versions. The EC-130 Commando Solo is another special missions variant within AFSOC, albeit operated solely by an AFSOC gain wing in the Pennsylvania Air National Guard, and as a psychological operations information operations platform equipped as an aerial radio station and television stations able to transmit messaging over commercial frequencies. Other versions of the EC-130, most notably the EC-130H Compass Call, are also special variants, but are assigned to the Air Combat Command. The AC-130 gunship was first developed during the Vietnam War to provide close air support and other ground attack duties. The HC-130 is a family of long-range search and rescue variants used by the USAF and the U.S. Coast Guard. Equipped for deep deployment of pararescue survival equipment, and aerial refueling of combat rescue helicopters, HC-130s are usually the on-scene command aircraft for combat SAR missions and non-combat SAR. Early USAF versions were also equipped with a Fulton surface-to-air recovery system, designed to pull a person off the ground using a wire strung from a helium balloon. The John Wayne movie The Green Berets features its use. The Fulton system was later removed when aerial refueling of helicopters proved safer and more versatile. The movie The Perfect Storm depicts a real-life SAR mission involving aerial refueling of a New York Air National Guard HH-60G by a New York Air National Guard HC-130P. The C-130A and C-130T are U.S. Navy and USMC models, both equipped with underwing external fuel tanks. The USN C-130T is similar, but has additional avionics improvements. In both models, aircraft are equipped with Allison T56A16 engines. The USMC versions are designated KC-130A or KC-130T when equipped with underwing refueling pods and pylons and are fully night vision system compatible. The RC-130 is a reconnaissance version. A single example is used by the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force, the aircraft having originally been sold to the former Imperial Iranian Air Force. The Lockheed L-100 is a civilian variant, equivalent to a C-130E model without military equipment. The L-100 also has two stretched versions. Next generation. In the 1970s, Lockheed proposed a C-130 variant with turbofan engines rather than turboprops, but the U.S. Air Force preferred the takeoff performance of the existing aircraft. In the 1980s, the C-130 was intended to be replaced by the Advanced Medium STOL Transport project. The project was cancelled and the C-130 has remained in production. Building on lessons learned, Lockheed Martin modified a commercial variant of the C-130 into a high-technology test bed. This test aircraft set numerous short takeoff and landing performance records and significantly expanded the database for future derivatives of the C-130. Modifications made to the HTTB included extended chord ailerons, a long chord rudder, fast-acting double-slotted trailing edge flaps, a high camber wing leading edge extension, a larger dorsal fin and dorsal fins, the addition of 3 spoiler panels to each wing upper surface, a long-stroke main and nose landing gear system, and changes to the flight controls and a change from direct mechanical linkages assisted by hydraulic boost, to fully powered controls, in which the mechanical linkages from the flight station controls operated only the hydraulic control valves of the appropriate boost unit. The HTTB first flew on June 19, 1984, with civil registration of N130X. After demonstrating many new technologies, some of which were applied to the C-130J, the HTTB was lost in a fatal accident on February 3, 1993, at Dobbins Air Reserve Base, in Marietta, Georgia. The crash was attributed to disengagement of the rudder fly-by-wire flight control system, resulting in a total loss of rudder control capability while conducting ground minimum control speed tests. The disengagement was a result of the inadequate design of the rudder's integrated actuator package by its manufacturer. The operator's insufficient system safety review failed to consider the consequences of the inadequate design to all operating regimes. A factor which contributed to the accident was the flight crew's lack of engineering flight test training. In the 1990s, the improved C-130J Super Hercules was developed by Lockheed. This model is the newest version and the only model in production. Externally similar to the classic Hercules in general appearance, the J model has new turboprop engines, 6-bladed propellers, digital avionics, and other new systems. Upgrades and changes. In 2000, Boeing was awarded a $1.4 billion contract to develop an avionics modernization program kit for the C-130. The program was beset with delays and cost overruns until project restructuring in 2007. On September 2, 2009, Bloomberg News reported that the planned avionics modernization program upgrade to the older C-130s would be dropped to provide more funds for the F-35, CV-22 and airborne tanker replacement programs. However, in June 2010, Department of Defense approved funding for the initial production of the AMP upgrade kits. Under the terms of this agreement, the USAF has cleared Boeing to begin low-rate initial production for the C-130 AMP. A total of 198 aircraft are expected to feature the AMP upgrade. The current cost per aircraft is $14 million, although Boeing expects that this price will drop to $7 a million for the 69th aircraft. An engine enhancement program saving fuel and providing lower temperatures in the T-56 engine has been approved, and the U.S. Air Force expects to save $2 billion and extend the fleet life. Replacement. In October 2010, the Air Force released a capabilities request for information for the development of a new airlifter to replace the C-130. The new aircraft is to carry a 190% greater payload and assume the mission of mounted vertical maneuver. The greater payload and mission would enable it to carry medium-weight armored vehicles and drop them off at locations without long runways. Various options are being considered, including new or upgraded fixed-wing designs, rotorcraft, tiltrotors, or even an airship. Development could start in 2014, and become operational by 2024. The C-130 fleet of around 450 planes would be replaced by only 250 aircraft. The Air Force had attempted to replace the C-130 in the 1970s through the Advanced Medium STOL Transport Project, which resulted in the C-17 Globemaster III that instead replaced the C-141 Starlifter. The Air Force Research Laboratory funded Lockheed and Boeing demonstrators for the Speed Agile concept, which had the goal of making a STOL aircraft that can take off and land at speeds as low as 70 kn on airfields less than 2,000 aft long and cruise at Mach 0.8+. Boeing's design used up with surface blowing from embedded engines on the inboard wing and blown flaps for circulation control on the outboard wing. Lockheed's design also used blown flaps outboard, but inboard used patented reversing ejector nozzles. Boeing's design completed over 2,000 hours of wind tunnel tests in late 2009. It was a 5% scale model of a narrow-body design with a 55,000 lb payload. When the AFRL increased the payload requirement to 65,000 lb, they tested a 5% scale model of a wide-body design with a 303,000 lb takeoff gross weight and an A400M size 158 in wide cargo box. It would be powered by 4 IAEV 2533 turbofans. In August 2011, the AFRL released pictures of the Lockheed Speed Agile concept demonstrator. A 23% scale model went through wind tunnel tests to demonstrate its hybrid-powered lift, which combines a low-drag airframe with simple mechanical assembly to reduce weight and better aerodynamics. The model had 4 engines, including 2 Williams FJ44 turbofans. On March 26, 2013, Boeing was granted a patent for its swept-wing-powered lift aircraft. As of January 2014, Air Mobility Command, Air Force Materiel Command and the Air Force Research Lab are in the early stages of defining requirements for the CX Next Generation Airlifter program to replace both the C-130 and C-17. An aircraft would be produced from the early 2030s to the 2040s. If requirements are decided for operating in contested airspace, Air Force procurement of C-130s would end by the end of the decade to not have them serviceable by the 2030s and operated when they can't perform in that environment. Development of the airlifter depends heavily on the Army's tactical and operational maneuver plans. 2 different cargo planes could still be created to separately perform tactical and strategic missions, but which course to pursue is to be decided before C-17s need to be retired. Operational history, military. The first production aircraft, C-130s, were first delivered beginning in 1956 to the 463d Troop Carrier Wing at Ardmore AFB, Oklahoma and the 314th Troop Carrier Wing at Swat AFB, Tennessee. 6 additional squadrons were assigned to the 322d Air Division in Europe and the 315th Air Division in the Far East. Additional aircraft were modified for electronics intelligence work and assigned to Rhein Air Base, Germany, while modified RC-130s were assigned to the Military Air Transport Service Photo Mapping Division. In 1958, a U.S. reconnaissance C-130A2 of the 7406th Support Squadron was shot down over Armenia by MiG-17s. Australia became the first non-American force to operate the C-130A Hercules, with 12 examples being delivered from late 1958. These aircraft were fitted with Aero Products 3-blade, 15-foot diameter propellers. The Royal Canadian Air Force became another early user with a delivery of 4B models in October/November 1960. In 1963, a Hercules achieved and still holds the record for the largest and heaviest aircraft to land on an aircraft carrier. During October and November that year, a USMC KC-130F, loaned to the U.S. Naval Air Test Center, made 29 touch-and-go landings, 21 unarrested full-stop landings and 21 unassisted takeoffs on Forrestal at a number of different weights. The pilot, Lieutenant James H. Flatley III, USN, was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his role in this test series. The tests were highly successful, but the idea was considered too risky for routine carry-on-board delivery operations. Instead, the Grumman C-2 Greyhound was developed as a dedicated COD aircraft. The Hercules used in the test, most recently in service with Marine Aerial Refueler Squadron 352 until 2005, is now part of the collection of the National Museum of Naval Aviation at NAS Pensacola, Florida. In 1964, C-130 crews from the 6,315th Operations Group at Nha Air Base, Okinawa commenced forward air control missions over the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos supporting USAF strike aircraft. In April 1965 the mission was expanded to North Vietnam where C-130 crews led formations of B-57 bombers on night reconnaissance strike missions against communist supply routes leading to South Vietnam. In early 1966 Project Blind Bat Lamplighter was established at Ubon RTAFB, Thailand. After the move to Ubon the mission became a 4-engine FAC mission with the C-130 crew searching for targets then calling in strike aircraft. Another little-known C-130 mission flown by Nha-based crews was Operation Commando Scarf, which involved the delivery of chemicals onto sections of the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos that were designed to produce mud and landslides in hopes of making the truck routes impassable. In November 1964, on the other side of the globe, C-130 is from the 464th Troop Carrier Wing but loaned to 322d Air Division in France, flew one of the most dramatic missions in history in the former Belgian Congo. After communist Simba rebels took white residents of the city of Stanleyville hostage, the US and Belgium developed a joint rescue mission that used the C-130s to airlift and then drop and air-land a force of Belgian paratroopers to rescue the hostages. 2 missions were flown, one over Stanleyville and another over Pawleys during Thanksgiving weeks. The headline-making mission resulted in the first award of the prestigious Mackay Trophy to C-130 crews. In the Indo-Pakistani War of 1965, the Pakistan Air Force modified improvised several aircraft for use as heavy bombers, and attacks were made on Indian bridges and troop concentrations with some successes. No aircraft were lost in the operations, though one was slightly damaged. In October 1968, a C-130BS from the 463rd Tactical Airlift Wing dropped a pair of M121 10,000-pound bombs that had been developed for the massive B-36 bomber but had never been used. The U.S. Army and U.S. Air Force resurrected the huge weapons as a means of clearing landing zones for helicopters, and in early 1969 the 463rd commenced Commando Vault missions. Although the stated purpose of Commando Vault was to clear LZs, they were also used on enemy base camps and other targets. During the late 1960s, the U.S. was eager to get information on Chinese nuclear capabilities. After the failure of the Black Cat Squadron to plant operating sensor pods near the Lop Nor nuclear weapons test base using a Lockheed U-2, the CIA developed a plan, named Heavy T, to deploy 2 battery-powered sensor pallets near the base. To deploy the pallets, a Black Bat Squadron crew was trained in the U.S. to fly the C-130 Hercules. The crew of 12, led by Colonel Sun Put Sen, took off from TAKHLI Royal Thai Air Force Base in an unmarked U.S. Air Force C-130E on May 17, 1969. Flying for 6.5 hours at low altitude in the dark, they arrived over the target and the sensor pallets were dropped by parachute near Engsi in Gansu Province. After another 6.5 hours of low-altitude flight, they arrived back at TAKHLI. The sensors worked and uploaded data to a U.S. intelligence satellite for 6 months, before their batteries wore out. The Chinese conducted 2 nuclear tests, on 22 September 1969 and 29 September 1969, during the operating life of the sensor pallets. Another mission to the area was planned as Operation Golden Whip, but was called off in 1970. it is most likely that the aircraft used on this mission was either C-130E serial number 64-0506 or 64-0507. These two aircraft were delivered to Air America in 1964. After being returned to the U.S. Air Force sometime between 1966 and 1970, they were assigned the serial numbers of C-130s that had been destroyed in accidents. 64-0506 is now flying as 62-1843, a C-130E that crashed in Vietnam on 20 December 1965, and 64-0507 is now flying as 63-7785, a C-130E that had crashed in Vietnam on June 17, 1966. The A model continued in service through the Vietnam War, where the aircraft assigned to the 4 squadrons at Nhale B, Okinawa and 1 at Takakawa Air Base, Japan performed yeoman service, including operating highly classified special operations missions such as the Blind Bat FAC Flare mission and Fact Sheet Leaflet mission over Laos and North Vietnam. The A model was also provided to the South Vietnamese Air Force as part of the Vietnamization program at the end of the war, and equipped 3 squadrons based at Tan Son Nhutafb. The last operator in the world is the Honduran Air Force, which is still flying one of 5 A model Hercules as of October 2009. As the Vietnam War wound down, the 463rd Troop Carrier Tactical Airlift Wing B models and A models of the 374th Tactical Airlift Wing were transferred back to the United States, where most were assigned to Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard units. Another prominent role for the B model was with the United States Marine Corps, where Hercules initially designated as GV-1s replaced C-119s. After Air Force C-130DS proved the type's usefulness in Antarctica, the U.S. Navy purchased a number of B models equipped with skis that were designated as LC-130s. C-130BII electronic reconnaissance aircraft were operated under the Sun Valley program name primarily from Yokota Air Base, Japan. All reverted to standard C-130B cargo aircraft after their replacement in the reconnaissance role by other aircraft. The C-130 was also used in the 1976 Entebbe raid, in which Israeli commando forces carried a surprise assault to rescue 103 passengers of an airliner hijacked by Palestinian and German terrorists at Entebbe Airport, Uganda. The rescue force a 200 soldiers, jeeps, and a black Mercedes-Benz was flown over 2,200 mi almost entirely at an altitude of less than 100 ft from Israel to Entebbe by 4 Israeli Air Force Hercules aircraft without mid-air refueling. During the Falklands War of 1982, Argentine Air Force C-130s undertook highly dangerous, daily resupply night flights as blockade runners to the Argentine garrison on the Falkland Islands. They also performed daylight maritime survey flights. One was lost during the war. Argentina also operated 2 KC-130 tankers during the war, and these refueled both the Douglas A-4 Skyhawks and Navy Dassault Breguet Super Hercules. Some C-130s were modified to operate as bombers with bomb racks under their wings. The British also used RAF C-130s to support their logistical operations. During the Gulf War of 1991, the C-130 Hercules was used operationally by the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Navy and U.S. Marine Corps, along with the Air Forces of Australia, New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, South Korea and the UK. The MC-130 Combat Talon variant also made the first attacks using the largest conventional bombs in the world, the BLU-82 Daisy Cutter, and GBU-43 Pabite Massive Ordnance Air Blast Bomb, also known as the Moab. Daisy Cutters were used to clear landing zones and to eliminate minefields. The weight and size of the weapons make it impossible or impractical to load them on conventional bombers. The GBU-43 Pabite Moab is a successor to the BLU-82 and can perform the same function, as well as perform strike functions against hardened targets in a low-air threat environment. Since 1992, 2 successive C-130 aircraft named Fat Albert have served as the support aircraft for the U.S. Navy Blue Angels flight demonstration team. Fat Albert I was a TC-130G, while Fat Albert II is a C-130T. Although Fat Albert supports a Navy squadron, It is operated by the U.S. Marine Corps and its crew consists solely of USMC personnel. At some airshows featuring the team, Fat Albert takes part, performing flyovers. Until 2009, it also demonstrated its rocket-assisted takeoff capabilities. These ended due to dwindling supplies of rockets. The C-130 also holds the record for the longest sustained flight by a C-130. From 22 to October 24, 1997, two C-130U gunships flew 36 hours non-stop from Hurlburt Field, Florida to Tupolev, South Korea while being refueled 7 times by KC-135 tanker aircraft. This record flight shattered the previous record longest flight by over 10 hours while the two gunships took on 410,000 lb of fuel. The gunship has been used in every major U.S. combat operation since Vietnam, except for Operation El Dorado Canyon, the 1986 attack on Libya. During the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 and the ongoing support of the International Security Assistance Force, the C-130 Hercules has been used operationally by Australia, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Italy, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, South Korea, Spain, the UK and the United States. During the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the C-130 Hercules was used operationally by Australia, the UK and the United States. After the initial invasion, C-130 operators as part of the multinational force in Iraq used their C-130s to support their forces in Iraq. Since 2004, the Pakistan Air Force has employed C-130s in the war in northwest Pakistan. Some variants had forward-looking infrared sensor balls, to enable close tracking of Islamist militants. Civilian. The U.S. Forest Service developed the modular airborne firefighting system for the C-130 in the 1970s, which allows regular aircraft to be temporarily converted to an air tanker for fighting wildfires. In the late 1980s, 22 retired USAF C-130s were removed from storage at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base and transferred to the U.S. Forest Service, who then sold them to 6 private companies to be converted into air tankers. After one of these aircraft crashed due to wing separation in flight as a result of fatigue stress cracking, the entire fleet of C-130A air tankers was permanently grounded in 2004. C-130s have been used to spread chemical dispersants onto the massive oil slick in the Gulf Coast in 2010. Variants. Significant military variants of the C-130 include, C-130AEGKT, Tactical Airlifter Basic Models, C-130J Super Hercules, Tactical Airlifter, with new engines, avionics, and updated systems, C-130K, designation for RAF Hercules C-1C3 aircraft, AC-130AHUW, gunship variants, C-130DD6, ski-equipped version for snow and ice operations United States Air Force/Air National Guard, CC-130EJ Hercules, designation for Canadian Armed Forces/Royal Canadian Air Force Hercules aircraft. U.S. Air Force used the CC-130J designation to differentiate standard C-130JS from stretched C-130JS. DC-130AH, Drone Control, EC-130, EC-130EJ Commando Solo USAF/Air National Guard Psychological Operations version, EC-130EA Airborne Battlefield Command and Control Center, EC-130E Rivet Rider Airborne Psychological Warfare Aircraft, EC-130H Compass Caller Electronic Warfare and Electronic Attack. EC-130VA Airborne Early Warning and Control variant used by USCG for counter-narcotics missions, GC-130, Permanently Grounded Static Display, HC-130, HC-130BH Early Model Combat Search and Rescue, HC-130PN Combat King USAF Aerial Refueling Tanker and Combat Search and Rescue, HC-130J Combat King II Next Generation Combat Search and Rescue Tanker, HC-130 Hours per Joule USCG Long Range Surveillance and Search and Rescue, JC-130, Temporary Conversion for Flight Test Operations. KC-130 feet per Joule, United States Marine Corps Aerial Refueling Tanker and Tactical Airlifter, LC-130FR, USAF/Air National Guard a Euro ski-equipped version for Arctic and Antarctic support operations. MC-130, MC-130EH Combat Talon I-2 a Euro Special Operations Infiltration Extraction variant, MC-130W Combat Spear Dragon Spear a Euro Special Operations Tanker Gunship, MC-130P Combat Shadow a Euro Special Operations Tanker, MC-130J Commando 2 a Euro Special Operations Tanker Air Force Special Operations Command, YMC-130H a Euro Modified Aircraft under Operation Credible Sport for Second Iran Hostage Crisis Rescue Attempt, NC-130, Permanent Conversion for Flight Test Operations, PC-130 per Carat 130 MP, Maritime Patrol, RC. -130 areas per second, Surveillance Aircraft for Reconnaissance, SC-130J Sea proposed maritime patrol version of the C-130J, designed for coastal surveillance and anti-submarine warfare. TC-130, Aircrew Training, VC-130H, VIP Transport, WC-130AJ, weather reconnaissance version for USAF/Air Force Reserve Command in support of the NOAA National Weather Service's National Hurricane Center, operators. Accidents. The C-130 Hercules has had a low accident rate in general. The Royal Air Force recorded an accident rate of about 1 aircraft loss per 250,000 flying hours over the last 40 years, placing it behind Vickers VC-10S and Lockheed TRI-Stars with no flying losses. USAF C-130AE models had an overall attrition rate of 5% as of 1989 as compared to 1 to 2% for commercial airliners in the U.S., according to the NTSB, 10% for B-52 bombers, and 20% for fighters, trainers, and helicopters. A total of 70 aircraft were lost by the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Marine Corps during combat operations in the Vietnam War in Southeast Asia. By the nature of the Hercules worldwide service, the pattern of losses provides an interesting barometer of the global hotspots over the past 50 years. On August 17, 1988, then President of Pakistan, General Zia-ul-Haq was killed along with the then U.S. Ambassador to Pakistan, Arnold Lewis Rafe, when a Pakistan Air Force C-130 carrying them crashed soon after takeoff from Bahawalpur, Pakistan. Aircraft on display, Australia. C-130 ARAAF A97-214 used by 36 Squadron from early 1959, withdrawn from use late 1978. Now at RAAF Museum, RAAF Base Williams, Point Cook. C-130 ERAAF A97-160 used by 37 Squadron from August 1966, withdrawn from use November 2000. To RAAF Museum, November 14, 2000, cocooned as of September 2005. Canada, CC-130 ERCAF 10313 is on display at the National Air Force Museum of Canada, CFB Trenton, Columbia, C-130B Columbian Air Force 1011 preserved at Columbian Air and Space Museum in CATAMAFB, at El Dorado International Airport, Bogotá. Norway. C-130H Royal Norwegian Air Force 953, retired June 10, 2007 and moved to the Air Force Museum at Oslo Gardermoen in May 2008. Saudi Arabia, C-130H RSAF 460, was operated by 4 Squadron Royal Saudi Air Force, December 1974 until January 1987. It was damaged in a fire at Jeddah in December 1989. Restored for ground training by August 1993. At Riyadh Air Base Museum, November 2002, restored for ground display by using a tail from another C-130H. United Kingdom, Hercules C-3XV202, which served with the Royal Air Force from 1967 to 2011, is on display at the Royal Air Force Museum Cosford. United States, C-130A USAF 55-0037 was used by the 773 TCS, 483 TCW, 315 AD, 374 TCW, 815 TAS, 35 TAS, 109 TAS, belly landed at Duluth, Minnesota, April 1973, repaired. 167 TAS, 180 TAS, to Chanute Technical Training Center as GC-130A, May 1984. Now displayed at Octave Chanute Aerospace Museum, Rantoul Aviation Complex, Rantoul, Illinois as of November 1995. C-130A USAF 56-0518 was by the 314 TCW, 315 AD, 41 ATS, 328 TAS. To South Vietnamese Air Force 435 Transport Squadron, November 1972. Holds the C-130 record for taking off with the most personnel on board, during evacuation of SVN, April 29, 1975, with 452. Returned to USAF, 185 TAS, 105 TAS. Gate guard at Little Rock AFB Visitor Center, Arkansas by March 1993. C-130A USAF 57-0453, operated from 1958 to 1991, last duty with 155th TAS, 164th TAG, Tennessee Air National Guard, Memphis International Airport, Tennessee, 1976–1991, named night train to Memphis. To AMARC in December 1991, then sent to Texas for modification into replica of C-130A 256-0528, shot down by Russian fighters in Soviet airspace near Yerevan, Armenia on September 2, 1958, while on ELINT mission with loss of all crew, displayed in National Vigilance Park, National Security Agency grounds, Fort George Meade, Maryland. C-130D USAF 57-0490 was used by the 61st TCS, 17th TCS, 139th TAS with skis, July 1975 April 1983. To MASDC, 1984 1985, GC-130D Ground Trainer, Chanute AFB, Illinois, 1986 1990. When Chanute AFB closed in September 1993, it moved to the Octave Chanute Aerospace Museum, Rantoul, Illinois. In July 1994, it moved to the Empire State Air Museum, Schenectady County Airport, New York, until placed on the gate at Stratton ANGB in October 1994. NC-130B USAF 57-0526, was the second B model manufactured, initially delivered as JC-130B. Assigned to 6515th Organizational Maintenance Squadron for flight testing at Edwards AFB, California on November 29, 1960. Turned over to 6593rd Test Squadron's Operating Location No. 1 at Edwards AFB and spent next 7 years supporting Corona program. J status and prefix removed from aircraft on October 1967. Transferred to 6593rd Test Squadron at Hickam AFB, Hawaii and modified for mid-air retrieval of satellites. Acquired by 6514th Test Squadron at Hill AFB, Utah in January 1987 and used as electronic test bed and cargo transport. Aircraft retired January 1994 with 11,000+ flight hours and moved to Hill Aerospace Museum by January 1994. C-130 ESN 62-1787, on display at the National Museum of the United States Air Force, Wright-Patterson AFB, Ohio, was flown to the museum on August 18, 2011. One of the greatest feats of heroism during the Vietnam War involved the C-130E, call sign Spare 617. The C-130E attempted to airdrop ammunition to surrounded South Vietnamese forces at In Loc, Vietnam. Approaching the drop zone, Spare 617 received heavy enemy ground fire that damaged 2 engines, ruptured a bleed air duct in the cargo compartment, and set the ammunition on fire. Flight engineer Sanders was killed, and navigator Lenz and co-pilot Herring were both wounded. Despite receiving severe burns from hot air escaping from the damaged air bleed duct, Loadmaster Shorp extinguished a fire in the cargo compartment, and successfully jettisoned the cargo pallets, which exploded in mid-air. Despite losing a third engine on final approach, pilot Captain Caldwell landed spare 617 safely. For their actions, Caldwell and Shorp received the Air Force Cross, the U.S. Air Force's second highest award for valor. Shorp also received the William H. Pitson Barger Award for Heroism from the Air Force Sergeants Association. KC-130 FUSMCB UNO 149798, was used in tests in October–November 1963 by the U.S. Navy for unarrested landings and unassisted takeoffs from the carrier USS Forrestal. It remains the record holder for largest aircraft to operate from a carrier flight deck, and carried the name Look Ma, No Hook during the tests. Retired to the National Museum of Naval Aviation, NAS Pensacola, Florida in May 2003. C-130J USMCB UNO 151891, was modified to EC-130G, 1966, then testbed for EC-130Q in 1981. To TC-130G in May 1990 and assigned as the U.S. Navy's Blue Angel support aircraft, serving as Fat Albert Airlines from 1991 to 2002. Retired to the National Museum of Naval Aviation at NAS Pensacola, Florida in November 2002. C-130E USAF 64-0525, is on display at the 82nd Airborne Division War Memorial Museum at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The aircraft was the last assigned to the 43rd AW at Pope AFB, North Carolina prior to retirement from the USAF. C-130E USAF 69-6579 was operated by the 61st TAS, 314th Tour, 50th AS, 61st AS. At DSAFB as maintenance trainer as GC-130E, March 1998. To DSAFB Museum, January 2004. MC-130E Combat Talon AFSOC 64-0567. Was unofficially known as Wild Thing. It transported captured Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega in 1989 during Operation Just Cause, and participated in Operation Eagle Claw, the unsuccessful attempt to rescue U.S. hostages from Iran in 1980. Wild Thing was also the first fixed-wing aircraft to employ night vision goggles. On display at Hurlburt Field, in Florida. C-130E USAF 69-6580, was operated by the 61st TAS, 314th Tour, 317th Tour, 314th Tour, 317th Tour, 40th AS, 41st AS, 43rd AW, retired after center wing cracks were detected in April 2002. To the Air Mobility Command Museum, Dover AFB, Delaware on February 2, 2004. C-130E USAF 70-1269, was used by the 43rd AW and is on display at the Pope Air Park, Pope AFB, North Carolina as 2006. C-130H USAF 74-1686, was used by the 463rd Tour. One of three C-130H airframes modified to YMC-130H for aborted rescue attempt of Iranian hostages, Operation Credible Sport, with rocket packages blistered onto fuselage in 1980, but these were removed after mission was cancelled. Subsequent duty with the 4950th Test Wing, then donated to the Robbins AFB Museum, Georgia, in March 1988. Specifications. Data from USAF C-130 Hercules Fact Sheet, International Directory of Military Aircraft, Complete Encyclopedia of World Aircraft, Encyclopedia of Modern Military Aircraft, General Characteristics, Crew, 5, Capacity, C-130EJ Cargo Hold, Length, 40 feet. Width, 119 inches. Height, 9 feet. Rear ramp, length, 123 inches. Width, 119 inches, C-130J cargo hold, length, 55 feet. Width, 119 inches. Height, 9 feet. Rear ramp, length, 123 inches. Width, 119 inches, 92 passengers or 64 airborne troops or 74-litre patients with 5 medical crew or 6 pilots or 2 Euro 3 Humvees or 2 M113 armoured personnel carriers. Payload, 45,000 pounds, length, 97 feet 9 inches, wingspan, 132 feet 7 in, height, 38 feet 3 in, wing area, 1,745 FTA squared, empty weight, 75,800 pounds, useful load, 72,000 pounds, max takeoff weight, 155,000 pounds, powerplant, 4 Allison T56A15 turboprops, 4,590 shp each, propellers, 4 propellers, propeller diameter, 13.5 feet. Performance, maximum speed, 320 knots at 20,000 feet, cruise speed, 292 kts, range, 2,015 mi, service ceiling, 33,000 feet empty. 23,000 feet with 42,000 pounds payload, rate of climb, 1,830 feet per minute, takeoff distance, 3,586 feet at 155,000 pounds max gross weight. 1,400 feet at 80,000 pounds gross weight, avionics, Westinghouse Electronic Systems ANAPN 241 weather and navigational radar, see also. Related development, Lockheed Martin C-130J Super Hercules, Lockheed AC-130, Lockheed DC-130, Lockheed EC-130, Lockheed EC-130H Compass Call, Lockheed HC-130, Lockheed Martin KC-130, Lockheed LC-130, Lockheed MC-130, Lockheed WC-130, Lockheed L-100 Hercules, aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, Antonov 12, Armstrong Whitworth AW660 Argosy, Blackburn Beverly, Cheongsi Y8, Short Belfast, Transall C-160, related lists, list of accidents and incidents involving the C-130 Hercules, list of United States military aerial refueling aircraft, references, notes. Citations. Bibliography. External links, C-130 Hercules USAF Fact Sheet, C-130 U.S. Navy Fact File and C-130 History page on Navy.mil, C-130 page on globalsecurity.org, C-130HERCULES.net, C-130 page on amcmuseum.org, C-130 takes off and lands on a carrier USS Forrestal on YouTube. Newsreel footage from 1955 of Blunt-Nose Hercules prototype courtesy of British Pay That YouTube. The short film Staff Film Report 66-12A is available for free download at the Internet. Archive, more, C-130J Hercules Tactical Transport Aircraft USA Images, Herculean Transport a 1954 flight article.